Good morning, student. I hope you are doing well at home, and I really hope your exams were good. And now we need to back towards our classes. So, here we go to start our chapter number 12, friction. And in this chapter, we will learn about the force of friction. Because in the chapter number 11, we have learned about the force and the pressure. Yes, तो force and pressure में हमने देखा when we pull or push any object, that is called a force. And force, what can force do on an object? Yes, so force can do various things on the object, like it can change the shape of the object, it can change the size of the object, it can also change the speed or the motion, you can say, of the object. Examples: when you catch a running ball, it can stop. मतलब आपने मोशन वाली बॉल को स्टॉप कर दिया बाय द फोर्स. And when you hit the ball from the bat, it can change the direction of the ball and it can also change the speed of the ball. Yes, and when you start a bike or a car or any vehicle, first of all it was on the rest position and suddenly it is start because you have start the engine. So this is also a kind of force. So we can say that when we exert force on an object, a object, if it was rest in the position, it can start motion. And also if we apply force on a moving object which is already in the motion, it can stop suddenly and it can also increase. आपने देखा है ना, जब भी हम रेस देते हैं गाड़ी में, so it can increase the speed of the object. Yes, on the empty road we can increase the speed, but if there are pits and pots on the road, if there are crowd on the road, so we have to apply brake. Okay, so it can decrease the speed. And when we have to turn the direction of the vehicle, then also we have to apply brake. सो दिस काइंड ऑफ फोर्स. और फोर्स में आपने बहुत सारे फोर्स देखे थे, और ना यहाँ पर आप जैसे स्टैटिक फ्रिक्शन है, रोलिंग फ्रिक्शन, फ्रिक्शन में आपने बहुत सारे देखे. नाउ वी विल स्टडी अबाउट द डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ फोर्स, दैट इज फोर्स ऑफ फ्रिक्शन. सो what is the force of friction? You would have noticed that if you push on a book on a table, it moves a certain distance and then stop on its own. Similarly, if we roll a ball on the floor, it rolls for some time and then it stops on its own. The book and the ball stop due to an external force, that is called the force of friction, or simply you can say it is a friction. In this chapter, we will study about the factors that affect the friction. मतलब कि कौन कौन सी ऐसी चीज़ें हैं जो फ्रिक्शन को अफेक्ट करती हैं. एक्चुअली फ्रिक्शन, व्हाट इज़ द फ्रिक्शन? व्हेन टू सरफेसेस rubbed together, that create friction. You know, when we feel cool, when we feel so much chilled in our body, we can friction. हम अपने पाम्स को आपस में रब करते हैं, अपनी हथेली को रब करते हैं, एंड इट क्रिएट हीट. You know why? Because both the palm touch and it create heat, because friction produce heat and then we feel warm. And in this chapter we will learn about the different types of friction and how the friction can be increased or decreased to our advantage. And you know, one more thing, force of the friction, the direction of the force of the friction, it always opposes the motion of the object. Yes, मोशन, आपको पता है कि मोशन जब होता है स्पीड इंक्रीज हो रही है, बट व्हेन यू अप्लाई द ब्रेक सडनली द ऑब्जेक्ट मे बी स्लो एंड इट मे बी स्टॉप. When any vehicle comes from the forward direction, we have to apply brake. सामने कोई ऑब्जेक्ट देखकर हम ब्रेक लगाते हैं, पिट्स एंड पॉट्स देखकर हम ब्रेक अप्लाई करते हैं. सो इट इज़ ऑल्सो डिपेंड ऑन यू, हमें कब कब ब्रेक लगाना है, यू नो वेरी वेल. सो इट क्रिएट अ अपोजिट फोर्स from the direction of the motion. Yes, so force of friction opposes the motion of the object. तो फोर्स ऑफ फ्रिक्शन की डायरेक्शन हमेशा मोशन के डायरेक्शन के अपोजिट होती है. सो नाउ आई विल शो यू अ वीडियो in which you can conclude that really what a force of friction can do to change the speed of the object, and it will really help. It actually really helps when we walk on the road and when we run in the ground and so on. तो जो हमारे फुट स्टेप जब हम रखते हैं तो हमारे जो शूज़ के जो सोल्स हैं उनमें जो होल होता है, दैट इज़ ऑल्सो बिकॉज ऑफ फ्रिक्शन फोर्स, बिकॉज फ्रिक्शन प्रोड्यूसेस हीट एंड व्हेन टू सर्फेसेस रब टुगेदर इट कैन क्रिएट द होल इन द सोल. आपने देखा होगा हमेशा कि जो एथलीट्स हैं वो हमेशा शूज़ विद स्पाइंस पहनना ज़्यादा पसंद करते हैं. वाई सो? बिकॉज व्हेन दे रन ऑन द ग्राउंड, so they need a friction, otherwise they can slip. Yes, so if we wear simple shoes only for the show off and the sole is smooth, so we can slip again and again on the road. And if the surface is too slippery, then we will slip on that slippery floor. So if in our shoes there are spines, आपने देखा होगा जो डिज़ाइन सोल्स पर बनी होती है, दैट इज़ कॉल्ड स्पाइंस. इट क्रिएट फ्रिक्शन, सो इट हेल्प टू होल्ड आवर पाम. ये अपने सरफेस से अच्छे से इंटरलॉक होकर एक फ्रिक्शन क्रिएट करती है, सो इट क्रिएट अ बैलेंस. Okay, so friction is very necessary. And what is the force of the friction? Let us begin with an activity to understand the force of the friction. So please enjoy this video and please understand the force of the friction. Thank you.
Introduction. This is a pool table. When the ball is hit, it moves to a certain distance and slowly comes to halt. How and why does this happen? Let's start the lesson and find answers to such questions. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to define friction, illustrate smooth and rough surfaces, describe the types of friction, discuss advantages and disadvantages of friction, illustrate the way to reduce or increase the friction. Let's take an example from daily life. While moving on a bicycle on the road, you pedal the bicycle and it moves on and on. When you stop pedaling, the bicycle slows down and gradually comes to a stop. Why does this happen? This actually happens because of friction. Friction is a force that is created whenever two surfaces move or try to move across each other. Friction always opposes the motion or attempted motion of one surface across another surface. The force which resists the motion of a body while moving on a surface is called friction. Friction is dependent on the texture of both surfaces. Friction is also dependent on the amount of contact force pushing the two surfaces together. A simple answer to this is that, while in motion, the tires of the bicycle are rubbing against the surface of the road. When two surfaces rub on one another, the force comes into play. This force acts in the direction opposite to the direction of motion. Thus, it slows down the motion and finally brings the moving object to a stop. In figure, a ball is rolled on smooth surface and another similar ball on rough surface. As you see here that both the balls starts rolling on different surfaces with same speed, same force and at same time. But the ball which is rolling on smooth surface travels a larger distance than the ball rolling on rough surface. This shows that the rough surfaces offer more friction than smooth surfaces for the same pair of contact surfaces. This example proves that friction depends on the texture of contact surfaces. It is interesting to learn that friction depends on the amount of contact force pushing the two surfaces together. How? Let us find out. Here a man is trying to push a heavy box. The box is not moving. Have you any idea why this happens? Well, when the box is pushed, the bottom of the box and the floor rub one another and friction comes into play, which resists the motion. The force from friction is more than the push force being exerted by the man. The box will move only when a greater force than the force from friction is applied on the box. Once the box starts sliding, you may find it easier to move the box already in motion. This example proves that friction depends on the amount of contact force pushing the two surfaces together. Now we can easily define force of friction. The force of friction is a force which opposes the motion of a body in contact with the surface of another body. It acts on both the surfaces. Some surfaces are smooth and some are rough. Some are less rough and some are more rough. Even a smooth surface has some irregularities, roughness on it. For example, when we try to move one sandpaper over the other, the movement is not smooth. That means there is friction due to the interlocking of rough surfaces. But when we try to move one plain paper over the other, movement is smooth as compared to sandpaper. Thus, the roughness of sandpaper is more than that of the plain paper. So we can say that friction is produced due to the roughness of surfaces. Depending on the roughness of surfaces, the value of frictional force can be more or less. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. Friction is the force which resists the motion of a body while moving on a surface. Force of friction is a force which opposes the motion of a body in contact with the surface of another body. Force of friction depends on the texture of surface and the amount of contact force.
So thank you and have a nice day, all of you, and please learn all the topic well so we can understand the next video very well. So thank you and bye bye. Please take care well.